Welcome to the Into His Eyes podcast, a podcast about life, its ups and downs, and looking daily into God's eyes, our hand in His. Welcome to the Into His Eyes podcast.
Well, thanks for listening, everyone. Excited to share today. You know, it's amazing when I start to do these podcasts again, the resistance to do them. I think anything that we try to do in life that's challenging or for us or maybe bringing some good into the world, I think the enemy does put up some resistance. And, you know, whatever it may be, my doubts, my fears, my insecurities, whatever it is, you know, it's interesting. You delay and you delay and you delay and don't put it out. But one of the things that I want to share with you, that we have a family text thread that we have on an app called WhatsApp. One of my boys is in Bahrain serving in the military, and it's easy to communicate that way. But one of the things that we talked about doing this year was to have a word of the year. So each family member is coming up with a word of the year. And they got some great words. I'm excited for them. And one of the things that I came up with for my word, after much thought and thinking about it, and I want to encourage you to come up with a word of the year as well, is mine is two words, and it's discipline execution. And what I mean by that is getting the important things done. And like so many of us have a tendency to start things and not be consistent. And I notice at certain points in my life, when I'm consistent in the areas that consistency is shown, then obviously I'm successful in those areas. And, you know, over the past 5 years, what I have shared with you guys, there's been a lot of soul searching. There's been a lot of inner healing of past wounds and hurts and different things that I really had to come to grips with, and have been working on that for the past 5 years, and have come to a place to where I do feel incredibly connected to God and much healthier and ready to get going again with disciplined execution and not stopping and starting. So one of the things that will be is doing this podcast, but the resistance comes in, you know, it just does. So that's supposed to be starting next year. I told the family I'm starting the December, let me look at my calendar, 11th to kind of get rolling. So by the time the new year comes that I'm consistent with it. But discipline execution. And it was interesting too, after I came up with that word, I'm like, hey, that's my initials, DE. So that was kind of cool. So I want to encourage you to come up with your own word of the year as well. What is that? For some of my kids, it was genuine, kindness, gratitude, you know, whatever that word, peace, come up with that word of the year and then kind of structure it around to have that be your focus or one of your focuses for the new year. So with that being said, that was not what I wanted to talk about today, but I wanted to share with you, I'm reading a great book again, and I think I'd mentioned that in the last podcast, Wild at Heart by John Eldredge. And it's amazing how you can read a book a second time and then have lived some life experiences and gone through it, and all of a sudden the book resonates incredibly more for you. And I've seen that. I've gone through, and I usually market my books pretty good. And the first time I read this book, I did not nearly market as much as I am marketing up now, and points are hitting home. And that's what I want to share with you today. I want to start with this reading from the book. Let's say it's June 6, 1944. You are a soldier in the third wave onto Omaha Beach. Thousands of men have gone before you, and now it is your turn. As you jump out of the beach, out of the Higgins boat, and wade, you see the bodies of fallen soldiers everywhere, floating in the water, tossing in the surf, lying on the beach. Moving up the sand, you encounter hundreds of wounded men. Some are limping toward the bluffs with you, looking for shelter. Others are barely crawling. Snipers on the cliffs above continue to take them out. Everywhere you look, you see pain and brokenness. The damage is almost overwhelming. When you reach the cliffs, the only point of safety you find, squads of men with no leader. They are shell-shocked, stunned, and frightened. Many have lost their weapons. most of them refuse to move. They are paralyzed with fear. Taking all this in, what would you conclude? What would be your assessment of the situation? Whatever else went through your mind, you'd have to admit this is one brutal war. And no one would have disagreed or thought you odd for having said so. But do we not think so clearly about life? And I'm not sure why. Have a look around. What do you observe? What do you see in the lives of the men that you work with, live by, go to church alongside? Are they full of passion, freedom? Do they fight well? Are their women deeply grateful for how well their men have loved them? Are their children radiant with affirmation? The idea is almost laughable if it weren't so tragic. Men have been taken out right and left. Scattered across the neighborhood lie the shattered lives of men and women who have died at a soul level from the wounds they have taken. You heard the expression, he's a shell of a man. They have lost heart. Many more are alive but badly wounded. They are trying to crawl forward, but are having an awful time getting their lives together. They seem to be taking hits. You know others who are already captives, languishing in prisons of despair, addiction, idleness, and boredom. This takes place like a battlefield, the Omaha beach of the soul. And I wanted to share that with you guys because I think that's incredibly, incredibly powerful. And so I want to ask you some questions, or want you to think about it. And if you have to really, really be honest, I think sometimes as men, and mainly who I'm talking to are men, that sometimes we have to get to that point of that brokenness, that despair, that point to where we feel like we may lose everything to really understand what may be said in there. Otherwise, we can kind of go through not dealing and not really realizing where we are. So I want to ask you some questions. Do you realize the battle that you're in? Do you have peace in your life mixed with passion? Do our heads stir in good ways? Do we feel connected to God, to our spouse? I mean, really think about this. Do we joke, laugh, have innocent fun? Like not the kind that we think we're enjoying, or the things that think bring us happiness, but we know that the next morning or 20 minutes after or 15 minutes after, we just don't feel good, and that was not brought us the joy or the feeling that we wanted. So I really want you guys to think about that, because it's so true. And sometimes what we do is we don't admit how hard life really is. And it is incredibly hard. And sometimes we just move through it, not really realizing the battle that we are in, and the restrictiveness that our soul often feels because we get caught up in the day-to-day, and there's nothing that really stirs in our heart. There's not really that passion, and we continue to get knocked down and beaten down. We continue to kind of wither within and maybe not say the things that we need to say in our relationships. Maybe not have the conversations that we need to have with our children. Maybe not pursue or go after the things that we would want to go after in our careers. And every time that we don't have the conversations, every time that we don't pursue or move towards or do the things that we know we should do, and we go to a lesser act of numbing that out, whatever that may be, or going to different things, that takes a little bit of our soul every single time. So over a year, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, we end up maybe being a little bit of a shell of a man, not really being who we want to be. And I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form that this is easy. It's incredibly hard. That was the whole point of what I was reading. But we have to be aware, I feel, of the struggle that we go through. It's hard to be a man. It's hard to be a woman. It's hard to be, life is not meant to be easy. And we need to be aware that we are in that battle. And we need to be aware of the struggle. And so often what we can do is, in those struggles, in those lessons, in those struggles, there's lessons that can be learned, right? When we press towards and when we do this, I mean, even a simple thing like this, I have to ask myself, why am I struggling to put this podcast out? What's really going on? Why do I have that resistance in my mind to say what it is that I feel may help somebody? But why do I struggle to do it? And then you have to go internally in and say, okay, well, what's really going on, Damon? Like, okay, is it something in your past and different things? And I probably know what those things are, but we have to do that, and we have to overcome that, and we have to do those things. And when we do that, we then learn about ourselves and why we do and why we don't do the things in our life. And that takes courage, and really that's growth. And so much of the things that we do, we may have some wounds, some things in there that we haven't dealt with and we don't want to deal with. And I think I talked about this before. But we need to learn to handle it. I think for so long in my life, I didn't, like I said, deal with the wounds until it all came crashing down. And then I'm like, oh, okay, well, I have no choice at this particular point. I better figure this out. Like, there's no faking this. There's no, pushing this off to the side. I have to figure this out. I have to get myself healthy to be able to move through life. Because I don't want to, and I'm sure you don't want to. I'm sure as a man, you want to live with a little bit more passion. That's what we're called. That's what we're called to do. That's that stirring in our heart that we have, and we want to revive that. We want to be able to feel that, and we want to be able to be attractive again, right? I mean, I'm sure if there are some women listening to this, they don't want a shell of a man. They don't want somebody that doesn't have passion in their heart, right? They want that person maybe that they first were attracted to in the beginning. And what happens is we lose that. I was realizing the other day, for example, in my marriage, I have not been dating my wife properly. I haven't been. And I thought to myself, how unattractive, right? Be a man, set up some dates, get it going, set it up, romance her, take her out, do those things. I haven't been doing that. I haven't. We've been moving and different things, but that's no excuse. That's no excuse at all. So it's understanding that. So I want to end here because, like I said, I want to keep these podcasts between 10 to 15 minutes, and we're gonna dive into this more. I have a ton of notes that I want to talk about. And a critical moment in a man's life is when all that he has counted on comes crashing down. That's a little bit what I'm talking about that happened in my life 5 years ago that helped me. And it's interesting because Eldridge talks about that, the book, that until that, everything that we counted on in life and everything that was kind of like a crutch, when it comes crashing down and it's no longer there, then we have a choice, and then we have to really explore. So I want to go through these podcasts. There'll be different things exploring that and really kind of going through that, so we can move as men and women, if you're listening to this, to really start to work towards doing the things that we know we should be doing, and to stir up a little bit of passion, to stir up those things, and to make sure that we're doing things in our life on a daily basis that is bringing strength and bringing connection to God and bringing power to us, right? Because the men, I feel we need to have stronger men in this world. I mean, my daughter is 15 now, going on 16, and obviously there's boys that she communicates with, And what I'm noticing a little bit is a whole different dynamic of how like pursuit and how that whole thing is going on, right? It just doesn't seem to be there that of how it was when I was growing up. But that's a different topic, so I don't want to hit that now. I'm going to end here because now I'm starting to just talk random stuff. So anyways, think about that, guys. Think about the passion. Think about those things we talked about today. Think about where you truly are in your heart every single day. I mean, there's things that we have to do, right, that we don't really want to do. It may be a career, it may be a job, but how can we turn that around? Or how can we understand that there is a stirring, there is a passion. I want to be more masculine. I want to go out there and live more like a man, and we're going to discuss what that may be. I'm trying to figure that out. I don't want anybody to sit here that thinks that I know, man, I'm working on it. That's why I do these things. And I've talked about that ever since I've been podcasting. Is the reason why I do these things is because I have to learn them, right? I have to go through them. I'm just sharing what I learn, and it's part of my nature to want to encourage and want to share the things that I learn. So we're going through this together to try to figure it out, right? But be aware of that. Be aware. And what I talked about in the beginning is try to come up with a word, right? And then structure it. I want to help, and we'll kind of go through that. One of the things that I love to do, if you go to DamonEddy.com, is I love to coach. I love to help. And I mainly work with men, and I would love to encourage and help and coach and you if there's any interest in that. So please go to DamonEddy.com, and we're going to hit some of that later on in this podcast of how we maybe will be able to structure that discipline, execution, getting the most important things done in our day that are going to matter the most in our life in those key areas. So anyways, you guys have a wonderful, wonderful day, and I will talk to you later. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Into His Eyes podcast. Feel free to follow Damon on all social media sites and contact him directly at damon@damoneddy.com. Thank you for listening to the Into His Eyes podcast.